What was that fucking movie about ghosts where they had the home video camera, Paranormal Activity?
Yeah.
I started doing comedy right around the time the sequel came out. And it was something about that was, like the worst experience of my life, and I'm a heroin addict, something to that effect. I don't remember how the joke went exactly. But then there's other jokes that came along, for sure. And I'd say I'd probably draw half of my material from that now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, easily.
Wait, I'm sorry, from Paranormal Activity? Or
no, yeah. My whole act is about Paranormal Activity.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the wonderful thing about a film franchise that goes on.
I know,
and on.
right?
When they asked me to be on the AddictsComedy tour, they thought I was saying Heroin Activity. And then I started doing shows with him, and I just kept talking about the movie from 2009 for the whole time.
You need help, mister.
I know that, hey, what's going on with this guy?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, since
the first step is admitting you have a franchise.
You brought up that you're afraid of letting people know what you were doing because somebody might get the idea or something. So, are you careful about was that really rare for you to give that much detail? Are you careful about how much detail you go into? And do you think, because for me, I found I've had people go, "Why the hell are you admitting all this?" Because not only I got lucky that I managed to break it on my own, God willing, I stay away from it for good. But I managed it just broke for me after 6 months one night. Literally, sort of a miracle. That's all I will say right now about it. But the thing is that I've had people go, "Oh my God," because I'm Catholic and I'm running Catholic comedy should you really be talking about, having had a pill problem, or should you really be? And I'm like, but then I have other people say, "Thank you for talking about this and sharing it." And I think that's my intention is that if we put stigmas on mental illness and we don't talk about these things, then it stays a stigma and people don't get helped. But I don't know. What's your take?
I agree. It's really stigmatized, and that's part of my reasoning for being kind of more open about it. And I'm, genuinely not embarrassed about it.
Yeah.
And I am careful, though, to make sure that none of my material is sending the message, drugs felt good and they were awesome. And I'm very careful never to tell stories that make it look like, hey, look at this really fun adventure I went on to go get heroin. Most of the jokes are actually about being a recovering addict, life in recovery, whether it be getting to know people again, awkward encounters with people who know I'm in recovery, even what it was like, of course, dating is sort of like a really well-trod premise, but you could sort of revisit it as dating and recovery and how that's kind of weird and stuff like that. Yeah. So most of my my act really isn't about my time in active addiction. It's about my time in early recovery and my time in kind of later recovery. Yeah,
saving it for the book.
Right. Yeah. saving the adventures for the book when I go out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So then, how did this start? I mean, because I interviewed you for a newspaper, Ventura County Reporter, a few days ago, and so.
By the way, the piece of hate mail I got was somebody who read the article. So
way to go, Carl!
Hey man, I try.
Hey man, they paid to get in there. It's fine.
Well, it's nice to get hate mail from literate people.
She was semi-literate.
And honestly, if the worst thing that you get hate mail about is that you were too funny, then listen, you're doing something right.
Right? It was really strange.
No, but you grew up sort of, you said working class, but in an upper middle class neighborhood,
right.
Or upper class, and everything was pretty stable in your family. So how did you wind up having this huge problem?
Your rock bottom.
And what's that also?
Okay. Well, first question, how did it all happen? So I was the youngest, and I grew up Mormon, and there was the church part of my life, which I'm not trying to be disrespectful or slam the church or anything, but as a kid, I just thought was incredibly boring. Oh my goodness, this is such... I had no interest in actually going and reading the scriptures and saying my prayers. But then over here, because Mormons are still flesh and blood people, there's a group of people partying and having fun. And I was like, oh, well, that's clearly the better option for me to have a decent childhood. That was just sort of innately more appealing to me.
Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah. But then when I got into drugs and alcohol, I reacted to them very differently than my friends. I fell in love right away. When I got drunk, I couldn't understand why my friends didn't appreciate it the way I did. I was like, don't you guys understand that there's this drink that we can drink and we don't have to do shit anymore? Like, school doesn't matter at all. We don't have to do our homework. And if we feel like bad or overwhelmed, we can just get drunk and just be like, fuck yeah, I'll do it tomorrow or whatever. And just saw it as this, like, kind of miracle drink.
You were, like, in your mid-teens?
Yeah. 16. Yeah. And then I would say it became like an everyday thing when I was, like, 17. Yeah, smoking weed and drinking and taking pills and everything became, like, an everyday thing when I was 17. And
pretty early.
Yeah, pretty early. And I had no intention of becoming a junkie.
Right.
I just wanted to party.
Yeah. How were you getting pills that early? That's a hard thing to get, I would think.
No.
Black market?
No, they were everywhere.
Yeah, there's a place called high school.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm asking. I don't know. I went to a Catholic high school, and I was very naive. I didn't experience almost anything until college.
Oh.
So I don't know.
They were readily available, man. Loratab and Percocet.
People have friends and family and raiding medicine cabinets.
Sure. Yeah. Raiding medicine cabinets. And a lot of the kids who weren't partiers took painkillers because they thought they were prescriptions. And they just felt nice.
Yeah. So that can't be bad for you.
Bingo.
Because you get it from a doctor.
Get your wisdom teeth
which is
taken
how
out.
you get an opiate crisis, America.
You got it. That's exactly right. But by the time I tried painkillers, I had tried everything. And painkillers became my favorite. Like, these feel better than anything. That became my DOC, like, straight away.
Drug of choice.
Drug of choice.
Drug of choice. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you know that, David. But we saw David. No,
I'm pro-choice. That's
well, did you ever have to deal with physicians or psychiatrists, or were you able to get it all without that?
I always got it off the streets.
Okay.
One time I got it from a physician, and I wasn't even, like, searching for pills. I straight up had a strep throat, and the doctor gave me Percocet.
What?
For a strep throat, for the pain. Now,
is that here? Or
that was in
back
Utah.
All right.
By that time, I was already like a certified drug addict. So I was like, oh my God, this is the best day of my life. This guy is just giving me all of these pills for having a cold.
Ticket.
Yeah. And I was like, what a great, great guy. What a wonderful doctor this guy is. And I refilled it like twice too.
Oh, well, that's how I got into trouble with the last pills that I was on. Because I was on 3 different types over the 6 months because I kept saying, I don't like this, or I wouldn't even tell them. I'd just say, hey, I need something without telling anybody that I was on something else, you know. And I didn't keep taking once I switched. I knew that would be really dangerous fast. But the thing was that I wasn't supposed to take one of them a sleep pill for more than 2 weeks. I had a sleep expert doctor. But the problem was when I called in to say, hey, I'm out, his staff just assumed the usual of, oh, okay, we'll refill that for you. And they didn't even give me the option. I was trying to reach the doctor to say, hey, I'm done. What next? And they were like, oh, we'll refill that. And I just thought, oh, okay, because I was still sort of like really zombified.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, well, they know what they're doing. So then I took another month, and then it happened one more time, and by then I was in some serious trouble.
It's like Michael Jackson died for nothing. You know, he taught us nothing. That's where the similarities end with.
Michael Jackson dying of opiates was like the Sandy Hook of opiate overdoses. If we can't learn from that,
wake up.
And Prince.
Yeah,
that should have been the wake up call.
That should have been the one. Yeah. What hope to the rest of us? But yeah, that's when it's sort of like the personal accountability argument goes away. Now, I was already a junkie, but a lot of people, their opiate addictions start off perfectly legitimately.
Right.
They're listening to these doctors, these medical professionals, and I mean, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
This person has an advanced degree in medicine. They know more than you. But there's new policies being put in place, thank God, finally, to actually educate these prescribers to know exactly what they're giving people.
Yeah.
Which is oftentimes extremely... They don't.
No, a couple of years ago, I fractured 3 of my ribs and wound up, going to the hospital, yada, yada. But because my deductible was covered after that incident, I'm like, oh, well, I have other medical issues that I can get rid of. And I went to a podiatrist who he's like, well, yeah, you have any pain? You know, I'm like, well, I fractured 3 ribs, and I used to work at a bar, a venue, so spent a lot of time on my feet. So I have back pain, and then, oh, well, what did they give you after the surgery? Well, no, you should have this. And I'm like, wait, I mean, thanks, but really?
What was it?
A fentanyl lollipop.
No.
Was it fentanyl?
No. Because I had after the surgery after the fractured ribs, they gave me a script for OxyContin. And then the doctor was like, no, you should be taking Tramadol. And it felt like so many times in college where it's like, oh yeah, you should take this.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to go see the dead. Here's some acid.
It's really crazy. Like, OxyContin was originally meant for people dying of cancer.
Right.
Wow.
Like, here's this to make death a little less shitty because it's going to be painful. So here's this.
And fentanyl's like 10 times more powerful.
And now it's being prescribed for, like, I'm sure broken ribs are painful, but you don't need synthetic heroin for that.
Right.
That's what OxyContin is.
Well, it helped, but the thing is, it's
sure
like, where the label says, take, 2-3 times a day or whatever. It's like, no, this is for when the pain gets really, really bad and unbearable. And that, like, so in the hands of a responsible person who isn't going to, well, it says take 2 a day. I did that once, several years back, when, just another more medical fun, but, I had a prescription for OxyContin, and the label said, take 1 or 2. And I had never taken 2. It was like, that's ridiculous. But then, I had a free day, and it's like,
if one makes me feel good, 2 must make me feel twice as good.
And I took 2, and it was like, I cannot believe that this is like medically sanctioned.
Yeah.
This is like best days of college partying, like doing this. Like, why would
I feel far too wonderful right now for a person with a broken rib.
Yeah, and but as someone who has experience with drugs and people in recovery, and it's like, no, holy shit, why would anyone recommend?
And that's what,
take 2 of these twice a day.
It's extremely powerful stuff.
That is literally the prescription to cure your lack of addiction.
Not to state the obvious, but that's what makes the whole black market trade so scary now. Is like, people are getting foils of heroin. They don't know what the fuck's in it. Like, it's cut with fentanyl.
Well, that's why I
lost a friend last August to that.
Shit, dude, I'm sorry to hear that, man.
I mean, if you've done it and you're still with us, you're lucky because it just takes once.
But that's what's kind of nuts about it is when I first started comedy, I had people come up to me after shows every once in a while to talk about somebody they knew that was in recovery or somebody that they knew that they lost to addiction. Now, 8 years later, it happens every time I perform.
Yeah.
Every time I perform.
No one's unaffected.
Now, serious question. Do you think that's because it's happening more, or do you think that because, in today's confessional society where everyone is opening themselves on social media and, nobody really has any secrets, do you think, or
I mean, that might play a small role, but I think it's mostly because it's happening more.
It's an epidemic. It's everywhere.
It's insane.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's just
really,
happening more.
Really scary.
And I'm seeing a lot of people who aren't necessarily confessional or open by nature coming forward and talking about it because they lost someone or they're suffering and they're desperate and they're also aware of, what's happening in this epidemic. So
it's awful.
I think it's mostly because it's just happening a lot.
One thing that my doctor, I'm just bringing this up in case you have any thoughts about or heard about similar things. It gave me an insight. This one shrink that I went to, who, when I told him, hey, because at first I was on 0.5 milligrams of another form of Klonopin for my anxiety. But to the first shrink's credit, or to mitigate, I went in and I was having a full-on anxiety attack where I could not breathe hard. I was just, like freaking out about just everything. And she's like, this is no way to live. You got to take this. And I didn't take it the proper times, so I caused my own problem to a degree with it. But then I stopped at cold turkey because I was one of our doormen had to wave his hand in front of my face and was like, "You're drooling today," and I was like, "What?" Yeah. And I freaked out and I stopped taking it. And the next thing I know, I'm missing like the Royal Seiko Tom Petty Weezer weekend, curled up in a bed, unable to move because I wanted to kick it. And then I went to this other doctor because the first one said, "Oh my God, you're not supposed to have done that cold turkey." Got off it, and she's like, "I'm done with you, man. You could get me in trouble." So she sent me to her boss,